And welcome to another edition of the Big Nick Energy Podcast. I'm Joe Yolk. That's Brad Dressler. Brad, how we doing this week?
I missed you, buddy. It's
I
been a
missed
little
you,
while.
buddy.
It's been a little while. We haven't been. What's it been? 2-3 weeks.
2 weeks.
Three.
You've had
Yeah.
great guests without me. Monica McNutt, like, damn, how do I miss on the good days?
Yeah, I've done a tremendous job without you. You were not missed at all, but it's okay.
I'm as mid as the Knicks. What are you gonna do? So we're
Yes.
recording this so for everyone knows that listens to this later tonight or tomorrow. We're recording this before the Knicks Hornets game, so we're not gonna talk about that game that much. By the time you hear this, the Knicks will be either 13-13 or 12-14, and they could be as high as fourth or as low as 10th. So I mean, the East is a crapshoot right now.
Yeah.
Just to establish how crazy the East would be, the tanking teams are the Magic and Pistons, and the dominant teams are the Celtics and Bucks, and the Knicks are smack dab in the middle. That's how much fourth and 10th are all about 500. Wild. But let's talk about what the Knicks did while we were gone, Brad. They went 2-2 on a 4-game homestand. They lost 109-103 to Milwaukee, which we all would have saw coming. They lost in embarrassing fashion to the Mavs, 121-100, which they've owned in recent years and time. So before we skip to Cleveland and then Atlanta, what do you think happened in the Mavs game specifically last week?
I don't know. I mean,
They
as
owned us.
as you mentioned, we, for whatever reason, in the last few years, we've absolutely owned the Mavs, especially at home in the Garden. I can attest to that. One of the handful of games that I actually got to catch last year was a Dallas at New York Knicks game. Won like $500
Nice.
on that game, which was dope.
Were you the
Literally
guy
just
they
like,
picked to try to make the 4 shots in the half court shot?
no, it was I actually remember what the bet was, as a matter of fact. It was Julius Randle points under, Luka Doncic points under, team total like under for the game, and Knicks money line all parlayed $500. Boom.
Nice.
That was really fun. But yeah, that was just a very Knicks-esque collapse that we've seen time and time again within the Tom Thibodeau era. I'm not entirely too sure why this keeps happening under Tom Thibodeau. Like, you see big collapses like that maybe once, maybe twice a season. It seems
Hyperbolically, what do you think this dude does during halftime?
I don't.
The most outlandish thing you could think of. What does Tom Thibodeau tell his players at halftime that they get outscored 41-15 in the third quarter?
He just yells at them and makes them feel bad about themselves or something like that. I don't know, man. I couldn't think of anything funny in that moment, but I really truly don't know. It's so strange how we've seen collapses like this 10, 12, 15 times in the last 2 years. It's crazy.
Over and over again. And Vin, I think you had too many twisted teas. We're literally on the second of the fourth games. We're going over really quick as you keep saying you don't know what's happening.
How you doing, Knicks fans?
You're welcome. Get past the Dallas game. So they lost those two, and then they win the next two, which is probably also surprising to a lot of us. On the second end of a back-to-back, losing to Dallas on Saturday in the Garden, and then on Sunday, they just totally stifle one of the best offensive teams in the league and a man that will be connected to the Knicks folklore forever, Donovan Mitchell, with a 92-81 performance at home. Just like making the Cavs not do what they did in the last third quarter or what the Mavs did in the third quarter. The Knicks outscored them three of the 4 quarters, and then they outscored the Hawks all 4 quarters. So for the Cavs game first, Brad, how did that happen?
Quentin Grimes.
That's fair.
That's the main differentiating factor from that game versus the game that we played in Cleveland earlier on the season. Quentin Grimes. Now, granted, it was a very poor shooting night. You can kind of tell that maybe they went out on the town in New York City and they weren't used to that, obviously. Whereas we have a bunch of party animals on the Knicks that can go out till 4:00 in the morning and then play a game the next day, whereas the other guys around the league just can't hang.
Speaking of which, can you believe that RJ Barrett and them went out on a night? I can believe that. That's not the crazy part.
Yeah.
The club that they went to spelled his name wrong.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
How can that happen?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I guess to work in the hospitality industry, you don't have to be the brightest.
The guy's name is on like every 5th billboard.
I know, right? Whatever, it is what it is. But like I said, it had a lot to do with a lot to do with Quentin Grimes kind of being that difference maker on defense, especially when guarding a guy as dynamic as Donovan Mitchell. But also I do feel like maybe those guys might have had a little bit of a hangover from the night before. I'm not entirely too sure because
it wasn't even a matinee game.
Yeah, no, they looked like a shell of themselves. I don't know. What do you think?
So weird. I want to work off that theory right there real quick, because you know how like when you wake up from a hungover, if you've gone out to like 4 or 5, 6 in the morning, if you're actually awake at noon, you're not quite hungover yet. You might still be a little drunk. And if you hydrate enough, you can kind of snap out of it.
Yeah.
Imagine if just all of the teams that keep destroying us on Sunday matinees, they're actually still a little drunk and they drink water and play their way out of being hungover. But the Cavs, because they went to bed at 5 and then woke up at 1 in the afternoon, actually were hungover for a 6 p.m. game.
Hilarious.
So I want to go with that. I don't think that happened at all. I just think the Cavs were ice cold from 3. Would they make 5 out of 29 or something like that?
It was bad. It was really bad.
And Quentin Grimes being on the court and defending Mitchell for a little bit's awesome and all, but it's not 1-on-5, obviously. It's not even 1-on-1. And our team, we only scored 92 points. It's one of the lowest outputs for the Knicks offensively, too. So the Cavs just missed open shots. It's like the one time that Thibodeau's let them rain threes scenario actually works, oddly enough.
Yeah.
To move on to the Hawks game real quick to get through all 4, the Knicks beat their oddly rival Hawks 113-89 in a game they led wire to wire. And like I said before, they actually outscored them every single quarter. Nate McMillan is seen by Hawks fans because I went through a lot of Hawks Twitter recently, just because obviously Trae Young in the shoes, and then you just deep dive because I have nothing to do at work. A lot of their fans think the same way of Nate McMillan as we do Tom Thibodeau, where he already reached his peak the one year that they surprisingly made the conference finals with no fans, and just it's gone downhill since then. I know there was fans in the playoffs, but them getting there is kind of crapshoot. So I want to ask you a quick question. I don't know how much you know or follow Nate McMillan throughout his career, but I feel like he's been in the NBA a while. Are Nate McMillan and Tom Thibodeau actually the same person? As in, they're both specialists on one end. They both don't use rotations in any way, shape, or form that their fans or people would think that they should. And they peak really early on teams and then just...
I think Tom Thibodeau is overall a better coach than Nate McMillan, in my opinion. Kind of to your point, like, yes, I was going to say, I was like, Nate McMillan's not a defensive specialist. Even
offensive.
Well, I was going to say a former point guard, of course.
Yeah.
I don't think Nate McMillan has the coaching chops. I don't think he's had nearly as much success in the league. I don't think he's as respected as a Tom Thibodeau is. But yeah, in a lot of ways, like I can see where like they have these like relatively high highs, but then these really low lows. There's no consistency with either of those guys, and it's like they're really easily figured out on both ends of the floor sometimes.
The next time any Knicks fans has free time and they're sick of arguing on Knicks Twitter about Cam Reddish, do yourself a favor and go on Hawks Twitter. It'll make you feel good about yourself for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the grass is or isn't greener on one side, but if you're not the Celtics or the Bucks or not even the Suns, really, it seems like it's just the Celtics and Bucks right now, you're having a bad time.
Right. That's going to be a hell of an Eastern Conference Finals, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's any way it's not those two teams barring like a major injury.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting Chris Middleton back into the swing of things, and they've already been one of the better teams throughout the season. So it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch those two teams go at it for sure.
I'm super excited. Also, it goes to show that if you do actually get a younger coach in that has newer ideas like Mazzella, even though Mazzella was brought in a crazy outside of basketball circumstance, you'll never know what you've run into. You might find a young genius.
Johnny Bryant.
Yeah, Johnny Bryant. Give him the guy a shot. First news that's not based on the games. Obi Toppin suffered a non-displaced fracture of his right fibula. For anyone that doesn't know what a non-displaced fracture is, it's when your bone breaks, but it's not actually, usually a bone break happens and they go off a little bit one way or another. It's actually just a clean break where it's not lined up, just so anyone knows. The average time for the break is 16 games or 4 weeks, approximately 4.5 weeks, depending on the season. So Obi's probably going to be gone till at another second week of January, more or less. We were just about to, we ran one game with the 9-man rotation that Thibodeau talked about. And the 4 guys on the bench, IQ, Deuce McBride, Hartenstein, and Obi Toppin. And now we're immediately down to 8, one game in. And the 2 guys that actually got garbage time the other night, Jericho Sims and Sve, Mikhailuk, I'll get it one day. Sve and Jericho Sims got the time. They didn't even get Cam Reddish or Derrick Rose, and forget Evan Fournier, but Cam Reddish didn't even come off the bench for garbage time. So with Obi Toppin out, what do you expect to happen with that 9th guy rotation?
First and foremost, it's Sve. Say it with me. Sve Mikhailuk.
It's way in the morning, baby.
Sve Mikhailuk.
Sve Mikhailuk.
You got it. There you go. Let's go.
I know I can say it. I'm actually
all right. I don't know. I think we're recording this just before the Charlotte game, and I really do feel like this is gonna be a very telling contest to see kind of what they do. If they do give Cam a little bit of time back, if they play a little bit of Jericho Sims at the 4,
no shot, man. You can't play Hart and Sims. They're whoever the small ball 4 is. That's a backup.
It's gonna be rough, right? So I mean, I did see an article that they're going to potentially run RJ Barrett a little bit at the 4, which
what Thibs said during his last interview.
Oh, did he? I actually didn't. I didn't know that. I read the article and I guess I just glazed past that. But yeah, that's really fun because look, in 2022, the year of our Lord, basketball isn't the same basketball that it used to be. You don't need a 6'10" guy who can rebound and play, defense in the low block. 4s are wings now.
You need to stretch the 4.
Exactly. And if you look at side by side, RJ Barrett and Julius Randle, Julius is not that much bigger than RJ Barrett. He can hold his own, especially, you can hide him on offense and defense in a lot of different ways. But I'm excited to see RJ run a little bit of 4 next to a center as well.
So do you think we're going to go to an 8-man rotation, or because in this scenario, or in my version of how I'm filling in the blanks of your scenario, that would mean Cam Reddish is the 3. And in my head, it's like IQ running point. I know Deuce is smaller, but IQ ball handling. IQ Deuce, Cam, RJ, iHeart, Sims, Mitch, insert center here. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying we're going 8-man?
Sense. I think it would make the most sense just because of the versatility of a Cam Reddish. If you're going to bring one of those guys back between the 3 guys that have kind of been dropped, i.e. Fournier, Rose, and Reddish, you're going to want to probably bring back Reddish because, I mean, he's probably it would make the most sense for them to ultimately keep him if they couldn't trade him, for example. But yeah, that's kind of my take on that.
I agree with you. I mean, I didn't think that Cam actually should have been totally out of the rotation in the first place, which you and I have both said on this podcast many times last year and then leading up to this year that we both foresaw a scenario that Cam's inconsistency, and then I don't think he's injury prone per se, but he gets knick-knacked a little bit and then just gets in these scenarios that he would be the odd man out. We don't have enough good players on our team, and he's not the 9th best guy on our team. He's probably 4th to 6th on most nights. Like, I don't actually see why he's fully out of the rotation. So if it's not Cam Reddish and it's someone else, either Sve Mikhailuk is way better than any of us anticipate, or we're going to go to an 8-man rotation, and that doesn't seem like it's prevalent or warranted in the middle of the season and not the playoffs.
I mean, unless the rumors are true that Fred Katz recently mentioned on the Athletic that we can make a trade as soon as the 15th of this month.
But he also mentioned IQ as a trade chip, and IQ's playing.
If they use, I know we're going to get into this later.
It was the next topic. Let's just say we're bringing it up now.
Cool. If they used Emmanuel quickly as a trade chip just to get off of Evan Fournier or Derrick, I mean, not even Derrick Rose, because I don't think you need to really attach that much to a expiring deal. Hey, here's Evan Fournier, and we'll give you Emmanuel quickly to get off of him. That is the worst sounding business. Depends on what comes back, because I don't know, right? I don't know what's coming back in that deal. That just sounds like absolutely god-awful, terrible business. What about you?
It sounds terrible. We have 11 first-round picks until 2029. You can hang on to, they literally can hang on to 4 picks and still give out 7 picks. And of those 4 picks, as the Lakers show you, you only need 2 of the next 6 years worth of your own first-round pick to be trade bait or trade eligible. Just give out a first-round pick. The Detroit pick isn't even going to take place until 2026, barring them getting the number 1 pick and getting Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah.
Just like, dude, they're both useful young players. Isn't the point of drafting useful young players unless you have a top 5 pick? And they keep saying this draft is deep this year, quote unquote. Nick Smith, who's on Arkansas, who's supposed to be the 3rd or 4th best prospect, already doing the Shaedon Sharpe, maybe playing, maybe not playing for a lot of the year thing. He's actually played unlike Shaedon Sharpe did last year. I know Max was telling me that the last podcast, but there's players like that are like, they have so much talent, they're tantalizing, they're projected to go top 5, top 10. If they're not playing at all that year or enough this year, and you don't get a good read on them, and then all of a sudden you draft the Zach Wilson of the NBA, you're screwed anyway. So you have 2 young, useful players that show they're young and useful already on the team. If you use them as trade bait, use them as trade bait for an asset. Do not, by any means, use them to get off of Evan Fournier's contract. That is horrible, horrible business. Did you see the screenshot I posted today from Hoops Hype, or Hoops Rumors? I mean, on Twitter, Hoops Rumors, you could look up their. They keep all transactions that are done during the NBA, so I love going on there once in a while. Just a reminder to everyone that 2 years ago, our offseason included giving Taj Gibson, Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, Evan Fournier, and Derrick Rose a combined $75 to $80 million for a year. That is horrendous business. Horrible. Taj Gibson was the most useful based on his contract because it was a one-year thing and they got off of it. On his contract, not overall, obviously.
No.
Alec Burks has ended up being the best player and he's not on the team.
So I guess we'll kind of pass on that because, I mean, to your point, I just don't think that it, like I said, like we agreed, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. We can kind of get past that.
I didn't even mention Kemba, but whatever.
Was that when we re-signed them or was that when we initially signed them?
When we initially signed Evan and then either re-signed or bought back all those players, it was the same offseason. It was 2 off seasons. It was last offseason prior to last year. All the same offseason.
So the offseason of Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier.
Right.
So here's the thing, right? I get where you're coming from. In hindsight, it looks like bad business, right? But here's the thing. We brought in Alec Burks on a 1-year deal. Why? To trade him. Because this was going to be a rebuilding team.
But that's the thing. It's like, why re-sign him for multiple years to have to trade afterwards?
I'll explain. They brought in Alec Burks as a trade piece to try to get a couple second-round picks or something like that. Same thing goes for Nerlens Noel. These were guys that were brought in that we were going to. I mean, I've said this a million times. If you couldn't recognize that the Knicks wanted to rebuild, the front office at the very least, that's why I just don't understand why Tom Thibodeau was the coach. But that's neither here nor there. If by drafting Obi Toppin while you still have Julius Randle wasn't enough of a tell that this team was looking to rebuild, I don't know what to tell you. But a lot of things in professional sports have to do with optics, right? 2 seasons ago, the almighty 4th seed season, right? You had Alec Burks who performed well. You had Derrick Rose who performed really well. You had Nerlens Noel who performed really well. Taj is, a consummate professional that you like to have on the bench. Plus, he unfortunately plays a lot of minutes under Tom Thibodeau when he's there, right? When you have these guys that you brought in to trade them and everyone knew it, and then you actually don't trade them because they all end up outperforming their expectations and getting you to the 4th seed, guess what? Now you have to pay the piper. Now
you don't have to do it for all of them, though.
But the thing is that it looks better from an optics standpoint when other guys that want to, are debating whether to sign with the Knicks or this team, because they're like, hey, listen, if I'm going to take this short deal and prove it, and then ultimately want to get a longer term contract, I can look back at Alec Burks. I can look back at Nerlens Noel. I can look back at Derrick Rose. Those guys earned their keep, and then they were given the money that they deserved. So again, initially it didn't look like a good idea, especially because you had to trade a boatload of second round picks. Granted, we're never going to use them. Had to trade a boatload of second round picks to get off of those guys. In turn, it can pay off for us in the long term. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think it will. I'm not saying it can't, but based on my fandom as a Knicks fan and what we've seen since 1985.
Yeah, but
I don't think
again,
our off season is gonna go that well.
I'm not saying that it's gonna sway away or whatever, like a high ticket free agent or something like that. But if you're getting a guy that's like more of like a prove it situation, a guy that's maybe coming off a bad year or coming off an injury and that wants to sign a 1+1 or a 1-year deal, and they have to decide between whether they go to the Knicks or whether they go to the Magic or the Hawks or whatever the hell. And they're like, all right, well, the Knicks want to give me the most money, and I think that I can get paid on a longer term deal after I do really well this season. I'm telling you, you don't think about these kind of things but in the background, these are the types of real things that are going on in real life. That's all.
So I get that's happening, and I know that does happen quite a bit. I have a question for you based on the scenario that existed for New York itself, though.
Mm-hmm.
When teams are rebuilding, they generally want younger players or like young assets, and you'll have maybe 2 or 3 veterans. They ended up signing 4 guys over the age of 28 and 5 guys with over 7 years of NBA experience. That's where I get lost in this. If you signed even 3 of the 5 I mentioned, I kind of understand or get it. It's that they signed all 5. And again, I didn't even mention Kemba Walker, who is closer to using a Walker than he is to actually making a game-winning shot, again, as terrible as that sounds. So
hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
You know, look, coming the worst thing that could have happened to the Knicks was the 2020-2021 season. Now, in a lot of ways, especially for us, the content creators, it's one of the best things that could have happened to us. Why? Because when the Knicks are winning and when the Knicks are exciting, you get a lot of the casual fan base to come in and be like, yo, I'm a Knicks fan again, right?
There's 8 million people in New York alone, not even including the surrounding area. So yeah, absolutely.
Right. You know what I mean? Like the world was on fire. Like everyone loved the Knicks when they were doing well. And that's the most exciting part about it. But in like I said, it was the worst thing that could have happened at that time, because that team should have continued to rebuild with a better coaching staff, a better front office, and a better management at the top. But they never did. And by signing Kemba, by signing Fournier, by re-signing all those guys, they doubled down on the season prior. They wanted to put shooting around Julius. They thought that maybe they can get the same replicate the magic from the year before, and obviously they couldn't. And now where we're at. But it is what it is.
I'm glad you mentioned Julius, because I'm going to say one sentence, and Julius Randle is actually our next topic. The one sentence I wanted to say is that I wonder if the marriagement of Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau talking to Leon Rose on, I don't know, a daily, weekly basis, however often, I wonder if Leon thought he could sign all those older offensive-minded players and actually get Thibs to have them buy into a defensive scheme and not recognize that Thibs' defensive scheme is obsolete and he's actually not the best at matching up or managing players. I think that's a major error. That's going to be the end of Leon Rose's tenure one way or another. Along with Thibs. I think it's coming to the point that when one leaves, the other one leaves, barring the Knicks actually going on a run right now.
Yeah, when you look at Minnesota, they weren't the best defensive team under Thibs. They were top 10 at one point, but they weren't that good. When you look at the
Chicago
Bulls,
had Joakim Noah and Taj Gibson. I think that's
then
almost a cheat code.
Joakim Noah, Taj Gibson, Jimmy Butler at some point. Luol Deng was a good defender.
Yep.
Even damn Carlos Boozer was a good defender. You know, so you had a lot of these guys. Shit, Kyle Korver. You know, yeah. Kyle Korver is not the worst defender. Even when he was healthy, Derrick Rose is actually a pretty damn good defender when he wanted to be. So yeah,
it's easier to surround a point guard, a small point guard with defenders than it is to surround a power forward that's not good at defending with defenders. You need a defending big more often than you need a defending small. You need wings and bigs. A point guard's a point guard.
Right.
You mentioned Julius Randle, and I wanted to ask you because even though I don't think NBA Trade Report is not a real verified Twitter account or anything, and their sources are probably non-existent, but it's fun to think about the whole Julius Randle going to Phoenix or anywhere else thing at any point. I have a question that's based on Julius Randle, the player on the Knicks, before we talk about him ever actually being traded. If Julius Randle was not forced down our throats as a number one, when he is so clearly, if he's ever going to win a title on any team, the third best player on the team, do you blame Julius Randle for that? Do you think us as fans get too mad at him? Do you think he tried too hard to be something he's not and then he sulks too much? Like, where are you on the Julius Randle fandom stakes currently?
I blame Scott Perry and Steve Mills. They were the ones who wanted him. They were the ones who saw this vision, and they thought that they had this player that was just like a diamond in the rough. And in a lot of ways, they were right, but I just don't. I mean, clearly, we had that one miraculous season, but other than that, everything has been kind of subpar. Like you saw, you have a guy that could put up 20, 10, and 5 any given night on poor efficiency. I still
4
think
turnovers, 3 back cuts,
bunch of turnovers, poor efficiency, and I still think he has a little bit of a hitch in his shot. I don't know. It's just like he looks weird when he's shooting the ball. But I blame those guys. I blame those guys in putting that battery in his back and making him believe that he's more of a one, especially after the year that he had coming off the bench in New Orleans. Like, yeah, you look great coming off the bench, and sure, you look good in Anthony Davis's absence, but you weren't a star player, and you never were. So,
and their team lost like 70% of games. Like, if you're putting up numbers and your team is doing that bad, that doesn't make you a good player. That means every team gets 100 somehow.
I used to shred with him and Elfrid Payton.
In fantasy?
In daily fantasy for sure. Yeah, that was great. Like both of those guys were like triple-double machines, so especially off the bench.
And their team's losing by 20.
Yeah. But
unbelievable. So to use that, say Julius Randle does get moved off of this team. Before I ask you what you think or what we both think we would be able to get as a team or a front office for him, where do you see the minutes in ball distribution? So just to really quick, this man's averaging over 21 minutes a game. He's averaged between 20 and 22 the whole time he's been here. He's averaging 33 minutes per game and an almost 27% usage rate. So where is that like production coming from if he's gone?
You get a lot more you get a lot more RJ Barrett on ball, right?
Do we want that though? Based on what we're seeing currently with RJ,
yes. Right now, yeah. Because based off my conversation with BJ Bass, right? He had mentioned that he wanted to see more of RJ Barrett with the ball in his hands, and that's where he was most comfortable. Especially in Duke. So I think that maybe getting him back to that with the ball in his hands and then have him being more of a facilitator. We know Jalen Brunson can operate with, off the ball when need be. But also we've seen a lot of Quentin Grimes with the ball in his hands, and just seeing him run a couple of offensive sets a game, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. So that's where you're going to see the bulk of that stuff go, bulk of those touches go, in my opinion.
You're gonna have to keep talking. My alarm's going off and my dog is barking, so I'm on mute.
Yeah, you're good. Whatever. We'll just cut this out.
No edits at
My
all.
dog, I'll actually let you hear. So every time the fire alarm goes off across the street, my dog yelps at it. And I don't know if it's because he thinks it's a dog or like a wolf howling, or if it just really, really hurts his ears. And it's adorable as his dog owner, but I feel so bad for my neighbors because there's just a really loud yelping dog up until like up until the alarm goes off. And at noon, it goes off every day for once, and he just doesn't do it. But if it's actually going off, like there's a real fire or a call or whatever, it goes off 5 times, and he's just like, "Arr, arr, arr," and I feel so bad, but it's so adorable.
Ask the people, Joey.
I will. Anyone in the comments, let me know. It's probably because his ears hurt, but I mean, we try to cover up his ears. There's no dog Q-tips or there's no dog earplugs as far as I know. And if there are, send me a link. I'll buy them and make my life a little bit better, or my neighbor's life a little bit better anyway.
But anyways,
so Brad, the last question I want to ask about Julius Randle, what would you try to get or expect our front office to get if Julius Randle was ever actually in a trade?
I don't see him netting us a first. I just don't see it. Maybe like a future protected first or something like that.
So I wanna push back on that real quick before you keep going. This is a man that averages almost a double-double and was a second-team All-NBA player and is only 28 years old and is in essence in the prime of his career and is on contract for 2 to 3 more years with whatever team would trade for him. And he's not actually a max guy. He's not getting paid as a max guy. He has a relatively team-friendly deal if he was on a team with a better front office. So how would this guy not get a first-round pick?
I don't know. I don't know how trading works. It's like it's weird in the NBA, like the value of first round picks, like pardon me.
Like he's not getting Victor Wemby, he's not getting the first overall pick this year, but how is he not worth like the 12th pick?
I don't know. Like when you look at other instances where guys have been traded like on draft night, for example, that are still under contract or whatever the case may be, it boggles my mind how they're talking about pardon me. Miles Turner potentially netting 1 or even 2 first round picks, but then Julius Randle, all they talk about is how he's not even worth 1. Which
I wonder if how much of that is actual New York media or like us downplaying our own players we don't like.
Here's the thing, right? He is under for some reason teams like paying their own guys, right? They like being in control of making those contracts. So when you're
the salary cap makes it easier for you. You actually get to save money that way.
Right, but he also has a trade kicker.
Yeah,
15% trade kicker. In the example that was given online with the Phoenix Suns, we would be receiving not 1 but 2 expiring contracts. So it's not even like we're taking back any bad money.
Are you talking about the Crowder, Saric in 2 seconds or something? Is that what you're looking at?
Or not even seconds. I mean, maybe we get second round picks, maybe we don't. I'm not entirely too sure.
That sounds terrible. I would not make that trade.
It's literally just like, hey, we're washing our hands of Julius Randle, and well, it doesn't sound terrible, and I'll explain why. The reason being is because we have a bunch of young guys that are on rookie contracts. That should be the core of this team, and the other guys should be supplementary to them, right? We have 3 first round picks coming this offseason. We have our own pick. We have Dallas's pick. And then if Washington keeps playing the way they are, we're going to have 3 first-round picks. Now, can we maybe consolidate 2 of those and turn it into 1 so that we come out of the first round with 2 players as opposed to 3? Yeah, maybe. But we have to cover our ass for the downside. And what is that? We need to have at least 3 roster spots available for 3 first-round picks and have the minutes allotted for them, So that would mean getting rid of veteran players like Derrick Rose, like Evan Fournier, like Julius Randle, and highlighting these other guys. And that's what you have to do. Listen, the 2023 class is tremendous. We're going to do a lot of work, you and I, going into draft season on a lot of these guys that the Knicks could be targeting. So I'm excited to get a chance to do that. But the fact of the matter is this. Based on the personnel and based on the draft capital that we have moving forward, this is the best approach. Get rid of all these contracts that you can, even if it's kicking the can down the road. It is what it is. It's not like we're not going to be able to replace him with a first-round pick this year. And hey, guess what? We have this guy that we drafted 8th overall in 2020 named Obi Toppin, who's getting 4 minutes a night.
It's
Put him in the
17, but I
freaking
see your
starting
point.
lineup. Put him in the starting lineup. That's it. That's my rant.
I think that there's a strong chance that we trade Obi Toppin before we trade Julius Randle. And I'm not saying I approve of that. I don't like that. I think that is stupid. I think with what one guy is worth versus his actual skill set and value versus the other, I think we're going to end up trading Obi Toppin before Julius Randle.
I couldn't. If we got Donovan Mitchell, sure. Now,
Well,
if there's no star on the horizon, that would be the worst. I mean, I couldn't co-sign that deal.
Last thing I'll ask you before we do because there's 3 games that we're playing next week, and it's a weird scheduling quirk that I want to ask you about. But the last thing I want to ask you before we get there, would you try to get Zach LaVine, and what would you give for Zach LaVine? Regardless of your first answer, what would you give for Zach LaVine?
No, to the first answer.
Okay, same.
His knees are made of freaking molasses and Swiss cheese. Like,
so you're saying he's younger, taller Kemba Walker.
He's younger, taller Kemba Walker, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
In a lot
so
of
if you were to trade for him, like gun to your head, you have to get him. What would you actually give or be willing to give for him?
I mean, listen, he's had some of his best seasons underneath Thibs, right?
Yeah.
You do have to take that into consideration. They did have a good relationship. Zach is pushing 30. He's a much more mature player. He is a bucket. Listen, 2 years ago, he was tremendous. He was fantastic.
He would be the most polished scorer. Well, Jalen Brunson, maybe. He would be one of the 2 most polished scorers on our team, bar none.
I mean, he'd be one of the best scorers on our team since Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
Let's be real, right? You know what's crazy? And I hate to say it. Do you know how much Zach LaVine makes this year?
Isn't it like 38 mil?
37.5.
Yeah.
Do you know what the combined salaries of Cam Reddish, Evan Fournier, and Derrick Rose are?
Oh, I actually did this trade earlier. I did Obi Toppin, Evan Fournier, and Derrick Rose, and it was with
Not
Obi
Obi,
Toppin,
pal.
I think it was 38. So with Cam Reddish, is it like 36.9 or something?
38.
Yeah.
It's about 38. So it's
That's
literally
so funny.
One for one.
Those 3 guys in an unprotected. Does that get you there?
I don't know if you're getting him for 1 pick, especially because you're taking back 2 years, 1.5 years of Evan Fournier, and you also have to pay Cam Reddish, even though he's a nice player to have, especially if you want to rebuild. But I don't know if you're necessarily getting
so 1 unprotected, 1 protected. How much do you think it would take to get there?
Somewhere between 2 to 4 picks,
okay,
depending on protections and stuff like that, would have to get it done.
I don't know. Yeah, that would be awesome.
But here's the real rumor, right? So what's been touched on by Begley and Fred Katz was the Lakers. The Lakers are heavily interested in. I've heard Evan Fournier, but then I've also heard Derrick Rose and Cam Reddish. Now we know that they've been interested in Cam Reddish for a while. I've been hearing through the grapevine, especially from the Twitter experts, that the Lakers have had interest. Shout out Tommy D, love the guy. Because I did the quotes, but he's been saying for a little while that the Lakers have some interest in Derrick Rose as well. Those are legit rumors, but the real question is, do we want to take back Russ? Because I don't see us really getting those first round picks from them. We might be able to just consolidate those guys just to get off of, not have to pay Cam, get off of Evan Fournier's contract, and then also, give them Derrick Rose. We'd be taking back, I think, an extra $8.5 million on that deal, but then of course it gets us off of Evan Fournier's contract. I don't know if that's worth it.
Russ is expiring this year, right?
This year,
is the
right?
Last year.
I don't know if it's worth it to necessarily do that without getting at least a first round pick back.
I've made it very well known I'm not a Russ guy. I haven't been a Russ guy since he was like on OKC with Kevin Durant. I just always thought that his play style and one, he was just small and like not going to age well, and 2, he just always was better as a second or a third fiddle, and now he's beyond that. He's literally well past that prime.
Russ is not a good NBA player. He's a good basketball player.
Right.
He's a hooper, not a ball player.
I mean, if you're 6'1" and you get back cut, even though you can jump out of the gym, that's effort. That's just putting your mind there.
What the audience doesn't know.
To get off of their.
1 second. What the audience doesn't know is that Vinny, our producer, is the biggest Russ fan there is, but he's also a very casual NBA fan. He doesn't really understand how not good Russ is. So
he's decent at fantasy basketball, which probably goes to him being a cash.
I'm deleting this part.
He's like you said, he's our producer, so this might not make it. He's an expiring, and it would prevent us having that logjam at minutes. But then Russ is the biggest headache to be around. Yeah. Derrick Rose is Tom Thibodeau's almost best friend, and seems like he was okay with being benched. Evan Fournier is a true sport. He complained, whatever, but he's doing it. And Cam, like I said before, has said all of the right things to the New York media when his effort's been questioned by myself and us included at various points. His consistency has always been a topic. But he's always said the right things to the media, which you can't say anything wrong about. What are the odds that Russell Westbrook doesn't just give tape fodder over and over again, not liking his role, not liking where the team's going? He can't wait till he gets out of here. Like,
yeah, it sucks. I mean, yeah, I think we would. It would be worth it if we got a first-round pick in return and then cut Russ to let him go sign at his leisure. But I digress. Let's move on.
Us giving him the last thing, us giving them those 3 players is not worth them giving us a first round. No one in that player group is worth a first-round pick on their own. So to just be giving away 3 players to match 1 contract, we're not getting a first-round pick out of that. It doesn't make sense for either side. I don't see it happening.
No, me neither.
So the last thing, like I said, we're doing this right before the Charlotte game. It starts in 13 minutes, so we'll get off real quick. The games after this will be either 13-13 or 12-14 going into. We are playing home against Sacramento on Sunday at 6 p.m. Thank you, God, for it not being a matinee again. And then, very odd, we're playing a back-to-back against Chicago this week, both games in Chicago. So talk about Zach LaVine and the media story that's going to be for the next 5 days after Sunday. What do you think? First, just for hyperbole and for us being psychic, do you think we're 13-13 or 12-14 when people hear this?
Charlotte always comes to play, and they always
slightly lose.
Yeah, but I also don't like the spread. I would feel like the Knicks have been the Knicks coming off 2 huge wins, and Charlotte just not being that good, and the spread's only about 4.
You know what it started out as when it was last night? Did you see the movement?
No.
It was Knicks by 5.5, and within 12 hours, it went to 3.5. I literally at work just watched it get bet down, and I was like, that's so effing weird.
Yeah. You mentioned that we have 2 back-to-back games
at Chicago.
In Chicago. When is that?
Wednesday, Friday. So we play Sunday against Sacramento, and then Wednesday, Friday, both at Chicago.
With a day off in between.
What?
With a day off in between.
Yeah. Weirdest thing.
What? Would it be freaking nuts? Because December 15th is the first day that players that were recently signed can start to get traded.
As an example for Knicks fans, like iHeart would be eligible in this scenario. And then Mitchell Robinson and them, yeah.
Not saying, I mean, not that has anything.
We're not saying those guys are getting traded, just to give an example.
Not to say that, obviously we didn't just sign Evan Fournier, Derrick Rose, or Cam Reddish.
They all could be traded today if we wanted.
How weird would it be if there was like a 3-team deal and like someone was trying to move a player that was just recently signed? And we play the game on Wednesday without Zach LaVine, and then we play the game on Friday with Zach LaVine. How crazy would that be?
That's bonkers. I feel like if I was Chicago, I would just be like, you guys, I'll make the trade with you guys. We can't do it till Saturday. I just wouldn't even want that to be a thing.
That would be hilarious. I don't know, man. My stance on Zach LaVine is like, I would have liked him 2 years ago before he really just started to fall down this like injury rabbit hole of just like constant nagging injuries. It was rough. So neither here nor there.
So to answer the question again, do you think we're 13-13 or 12-14 going into tomorrow?
I don't think Charlotte's that good. The line does scare me a little bit. I would think it's a little bit more in favor of the Knicks, but the fact that everyone's betting it down, the pessimist in me says 12-14.
Okay, I think we're 13-13. I should have literally bet the under when the Hawks game happened because I was like, that's way too high, and I just went against it because I questioned it. I'm not doing that again. The Hornets aren't that good. They're missing 2 of their best 4 players. We're gonna win tonight.
Who's not playing?
LaMelo Ball, first and
Oh, he's
foremost.
not.
No, LaMelo was out.
Still.
Yeah, well, no, he came back and left immediately. He like played 3 games and then got hurt again.
Okay. And who else? PJ?
So DSJ is also out. I'm clicking on the thing now just to tell you the whole shebang. Injury to LaMelo Ball, Gordon Hayward, Mark Williams, who's the backup center. That doesn't matter. Cody Martin and DSJ all out. So Ball and Hayward are both not playing. So that's why that's why I think, and DSJ, who's actually a decent.
Then why is it still a 3.5 point spread?
Because they are scared of Scary Terry. I don't know. I have no clue. Kelly
It just
Oubre,
scares me.
he's scary.
When it comes to he's scary. When it comes to betting, when it doesn't make sense, it probably doesn't make sense. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say.
I thought that, and I should have did that the under, and the under hit by like 20 points the other night.
Yeah,
so I'm not
sure.
Yeah. So Sacramento home Sunday. I think we're probably gonna lose. Sacramento actually scares me.
Sacramento's been really good.
Yeah.
Sacramento's been really good. Now,
if you are a gambler, though, bet any and all Julius Randle props on Sunday because he dominates Thomas Sabonis whenever they play.
Yeah, facts. And they're just not a good defense. It's just that their offense is on fire this year. It's like
Dynamite.
a 5 offense or something like that.
Yeah. And then what about both Chicago games?
Chicago sucks. I think we split them, though. I think we split them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you think we're going 1-2, and you had us 12-14, you think we're going to be 13-16. I think we're winning tonight, so we'll be 13-13, but I think we're going 1-2, so we're going to be 14-15, and we will see how it goes.
Yep.
Brad, any last words before we watch this Knicks Hornets game?
Let's go Knicks.
Let's go Knicks. And then Russell Westbrook is not good.
Let's go Birds.